Today is Jimmy Swaggart's funeral. Jimmy Swaggart passed away on July 5th, 2025, at the age of 90. This is not just a funeral, it's the end of an era. Jimmy wasn't just a preacher. He was a global voice, a man whose sermons reached millions, whose music filled homes, and whose story, both rise and fall, kept the world watching. His life was full of passion, mistakes, forgiveness, and faith. And now, as people gather to say goodbye, they're not just mourning a man, they're remembering a journey that touched hearts, challenged beliefs, and changed lives. On July 12th and 2025, thousands of people gathered at the Family Worship Center in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, for Jimmy's final farewell. The church he founded and preached in for decades became the place where the world came to say goodbye. July 12th was the public viewing and wake. From 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., people walked through quietly. Some held flowers. Some clutched worn-out Bibles marked with his old sermons. His gospel music played softly, filling the air with emotion. The room was filled with white roses and a wooden cross, and in the center stood the closed casket of a man who had preached forgiveness his whole life. On July 13th, at 10 a.m., the official funeral service began. His son, Donnie Swaggart, led the ceremony with powerful words and a trembling voice. Jimmy Swaggart was more than a preacher. He was a gospel singer, a pianist, and a man of humble beginnings. Born in Ferriday, Louisiana, in 1935, he was raised in poverty. His cousins, Jerry Lee Lewis and Mickey Gilley, chose rock and country music. But Jimmy followed a different path. He chose gospel and God. His voice became famous across America in the 1970s and 1980s. He sold millions of gospel records and launched a television ministry that reached over 100 countries. He preached with passion, sang with tears, and told stories of Jesus that touched even the coldest hearts. But fame has a price, and Jimmy's scandals in the late 1980s and 1990s shocked the world. Still, many forgave him. They didn't forget. They forgave. The world reacted to Jimmy's death with mixed emotions. Social media was flooded with both love and criticism. One person wrote, "I didn't agree with everything, but his music brought my whole family to church." Another commented, "A flawed man, but honest about it." That's rare. His life was filled with both praise and scandal. He continued preaching, singing, and trying to rebuild what was broken. That honesty, standing on stage, even when he was at his lowest, is what made him different. Many compared him to others like Billy Graham, who maintained a clean image. But Jimmy showed something else: how to fall and still stand up again. His family played a major role throughout his life. Frances Swaggart, his wife of more than 70 years, never left his side. Through the storms and the spotlight, she stayed. His son, Donnie, stood by him in the pulpit and helped carry the ministry forward. His grandson, Gabriel, brought new energy and helped modernize their TV outreach. During the funeral, Donnie said, "My father wasn't perfect, but he loved God more than anything. He taught me to fight for what I believe in even when the world turns its back." Not every famous family survives fame, but the Swaggarts held on. Like the Billy Graham family, they built a legacy of unity, not division. Jimmy's legacy is not simple. He had moments of greatness, and he had moments of regret. He was a preacher who touched millions, but he also fell from grace in front of the world. Some people focus only on his scandals. Others only remember his music. But the truth is both. Hell, he was a man of powerful faith and public failure. And still, his sermons are watched, his albums are sold, and his church is full. A newspaper headline once read, "The Preacher Who Wouldn't Quit." That title fits. Even after everything, he kept preaching. He didn't walk away. And maybe that's what made him so unforgettable when comparing Jimmy to other religious leaders. The differences are clear. Billy Graham stayed respected until the end. Joel Osteen focuses on positivity. T.D. Jakes talks about purpose. Jimmy, however, mixed music and message. He preached forgiveness and sang about grace. He made mistakes publicly, but unlike others who tried to hide, Jimmy confessed. Some people compared him to King David, a man who sinned, repented, and still led. Pastor Rick Warren once said, "God uses broken people to do big things." That quote fits Jimmy Swaggart perfectly. As the funeral service ended, the choir sang, "There Is a River," Jimmy's favorite song. It was the same hymn he sang so many times with tears in his eyes. The moment was powerful. Some people cried silently. Others sang along. A few simply stood still, letting the moment sink in. His casket was carried out slowly. Frances walked behind it, holding Donnie's hand. There were no fancy speeches or grand performances, just a quiet, emotional goodbye to a man who changed lives, sparked debates, and kept standing through every storm. Today, Jimmy Swaggart is gone, but his story remains. What will you remember? Was he the preacher who failed or the singer who healed? Will you remember the scandals or the sermons? Will you judge him only for his mistakes, also for the times he asked for forgiveness and tried to do better? Jimmy Swaggart's life teaches us something that many people avoid talking about: what happens after failure. Most people admire success, But very few talk about those who fall in public and still try to rise again. Jimmy didn't run away. He didn't hide forever. He faced the world with his broken heart and continued his ministry. That kind of strength is rare. He reminded us that God does not only use perfect people. Sometimes the most powerful messages come from the most painful experiences. And sometimes the most honest preachers are the ones who know what it means to fall during the final service. A close friend of the Swaggart family shared a simple but powerful message. He said, "Jimmy Swaggart gave people hope, not because he was perfect, but because he showed us that God loves imperfect people too." This line made many in the audience nod their heads and wipe their tears. In a world that often demands perfection, Jimmy's life proved that brokenness can still be used for something good. His legacy is not just in the sermons he preached, but in the truth he lived, no matter how painful or public it was. There are very few figures in modern Christianity who had such a mix of glory and controversy. And yet, when you look at the people who came to his funeral, from the elderly who watched him for decades to the young ones who knew him through YouTube videos, it's clear that he left a lasting impression. His voice, his songs, his messages, they didn't die with him. They continue to echo in churches, in homes, and in hearts. Even critics admit that his influence shaped a generation of believers and helped millions find faith during dark times. So, as we close this chapter on Jimmy Swaggart's life, we are left with questions that reach beyond his story. How do we judge a man's life? Is it only by his failures, also by the times he got back up? Do we remember only the mistakes, or also the messages of hope and grace that followed? And more importantly, can we offer others the same forgiveness we ourselves hope to receive? Someday, Jimmy Swaggart is no longer here. Can we, as people, learn from his journey that even when you fall, you can stand again? That grace still exists for those who seek it. And when the world watches your lowest moment, will you disappear? Will you keep going like Jimmy did? His funeral is not just the end of his life. It's the beginning of reflection for all of us about faith, about failure, about forgiveness, about family, and about fighting for what you believe in, even when it's hard. So now we ask you, what would you do if your worst moment was shown to the world? Would you give up, poor, get back up like Jimmy did? Can they be forgiven then when the whole world is watching? And finally, do you believe, like Jimmy Swaggart believed, that grace is bigger than failure?